In this video, you would see the fight of the strongest hunter in America who thought he could crush one man with pure strength, but he had no idea he was about to challenge the Shadow Monarch himself. In solo leveling, after Sung Jinwoo refused Thomas Andre's demand for an apology, Thomas completely lost his temper. Lightning-like energy burst from his body as his massive muscles tensed. Every hunter behind him immediately prepared for battle. On the opposite side, the Shadow Army was already standing by. The moment both leaders gave the signal, the abandoned factory exploded into complete chaos. Thomas charged across the battlefield at incredible speed, aiming straight for Jinwoo without a second thought. But Tusk suddenly appeared, raising a massive magical barrier to stop him. Thomas smashed through it effortlessly, punched straight through Tusk's skull, and coldly declared, "None of you stand a chance against me." Crashing through the roof, Thomas landed inside the factory, only to discover that several of his strongest hunters had already been defeated. Anyone who dared approach Jinwoo was being eliminated almost instantly. Without hesitation, Thomas rushed toward Jinwoo, but Iron stepped in to block his path. Thomas casually throws him aside, using his gravity-based power. Then, in an instant, Jinwoo disappeared. He reappeared beside Thomas so quickly that even Thomas barely had time to react. Jinwoo drove the Demon King's dagger toward him, but the blade failed to pierce Thomas' skin. Even Jinwoo was surprised by his unbelievable durability. Thomas answered with a devastating punch that launched Jinwoo high into the air. He immediately activated his gravity ability, pulling Jinwoo back toward him as if an invisible force had seized him. Looking down confidently, Thomas said, "Feel the difference between our strength and sink into despair." But Jinwoo refused to give in. Instead, he unleashed a similar force, pinning Thomas beneath crushing pressure. Thomas was caught completely off guard because this wasn't the power of someone barely surviving. It was the power of someone fighting back. As Jinwoo closed in, the pressure increases. A split second later, Jinwoo landed a crushing punch directly on Thomas's face. For the first time in his life, Thomas Andre began to bleed. The impact sent him flying across the battlefield. Before Thomas could recover, Jinwoo was already standing in front of him. Calmly, he asked, "What was it you said earlier? That I should understand the difference in our strength?" Then Jinwoo unleashed a relentless barrage of punches, giving Thomas no chance to fight back. Enraged, Thomas transformed into his true battle form. His aura exploded outward while his muscles expanded dramatically. Glaring at Jinwoo with burning rage, he roared, "I'll show you the power of hell!" At the same time, the Hunter Association declared a state of emergency. Inside a nearby vehicle, one man couldn't understand the panic. An S-rank hunter looked at him with a grim expression and said, "There's a real possibility that everyone here could die." Back on the battlefield, Thomas released his ultimate form. His aura became so overwhelming that even Jinwoo felt fear for the first time. Everything about Thomas had changed. Jinwoo immediately remembered Thomas mentioning the 4 humans who carried the power of the rulers, making him wonder if Thomas was one of them. Instead of retreating, Jinwoo became even more excited. He rushed forward at blinding speed, determined to finish the battle with a single decisive strike. Thomas prepared a devastating attack capable of ending the fight instantly, but Jinwoo sensed the danger at the last second and leaped away. The resulting blast ripped through the entire factory like a massive earthquake. Even Jinwoo admitted that taking the attack head-on could have seriously injured him, but Thomas wasn't done yet. He gathered an enormous black sphere of energy in his hand, forcing every nearby hunter to flee. One after another, shadow soldiers were dragged into the sphere and vanished. Only Jinwoo managed to resist the overwhelming pull, admitting he had never witnessed an ability like this before. Thomas unleashed the attack, completely destroying everything around him. Rather than meeting it head-on, Jinwoo avoided the blast and carefully watched from a distance. Thomas glared at him and warned, "Next time, I will show no mercy." Jinwoo accepted without hesitation, because he knew the battle would only end when one of them finally fell. Outside the battlefield, hunters rushed to rescue the wounded. Everyone understood that remaining anywhere near Thomas in this state meant certain death. Thomas charged with everything he had, determined to finish Jinwoo once and for all. But Jinwoo responded with unbelievable confidence, stopping Thomas's full-powered charge using a single foot, before effortlessly forcing him backward. Thomas immediately activated his gravity ability again, but Jinwoo countered with ruler's authority. The shocking part was that Jinwoo intentionally allowed the gravitational force to pull him closer, completely confusing Thomas, who expected him to keep his distance. Thomas poured every ounce of strength into one final punch. When their fists collided, the battlefield exploded from the impact. What unsettled Thomas Thomas most wasn't the explosion, it was Jinwoo's expression. He remained completely calm, fighting with absolute confidence as though he controlled every moment of the battle. Moments later, Thomas crashed into the ground but forced himself back up. Jinwoo instantly closed the gap once again. Thomas threw another powerful punch, but Jinwoo effortlessly avoided it, causing the attack to shatter the ground. Jinwoo grabbed Thomas by the horns and slammed his knee into him, completely destroying his armor. At that moment, members of the Hunter Association arrived. Adam White and the hunters beside him were left speechless. The overwhelming energy filling the battlefield no longer felt human. One hunter warned Adam, "If we get any closer, we'll die." As the dust settled, Jinwoo launched another relentless barrage of punches. Every punch snapped Thomas's head violently from side to side. Even Thomas couldn't believe he was being completely overwhelmed. He desperately tried to fight back, but it was useless. Jinwoo had taken full control of the battle. Using the last of his strength, Thomas staggered to his feet and roared, "I am Thomas Andre! I will never be defeated so easily!" But Jinwoo had already decided the outcome. He knocked Thomas down once again and coldly replied, "That's what I've been telling you from the start. I don't care who you are." Jinwoo continued attacking until Thomas could no longer stand. Only after Thomas finally admitted defeat, then Jinwoo stopped. With that victory, Sung Jinwoo firmly proved that he was the strongest hunter in the world. Subscribe for more and tell me which fight I should upload next.